generation may exceed demand at the moment, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're completely out of the dark. Earlier today, Electricity Minister Rofhiwa gave an update on the implementation of the Energy Action Plan. He says there were 130 more days of power cuts in 2022 compared to the 75 reported the year before. Energy expert Professor Mark Swilling joins us this evening to discuss this further. And thank you very much for joining us this evening, Prof. And I suppose your initial thoughts on the lower stages of power cuts that we've seen as a country over the last 2 or 3 weeks. Some of us actually feel like it's a little bit abnormal not to have your lights switch off at a certain time. But does this necessarily mean that there's actual positive developments happening within the country's power stations, that we may see some form of sustainable power supply in the country in the short to the medium term at least?
Well, I mean, obviously all South Africans are breathing a huge sigh of relief that the much predicted worsening of load shedding during the deep winter months does not seem to be materializing. And that starts to build up a kind of rosier picture of the future of our energy system. However, I think we must stick with the words of the Minister of Electricity, who is saying that no matter what happens, 2023 will be much worse than 2022. And you've already cited some of the statistics there. So what happens during the winter months is that there is less demand on the grid because some of the big industries close down for maintenance. There is fewer unplanned breakdowns in the Eskom energy system, which is very good news. And some of the investments in repairing some of the machines are beginning to pay off. There's a priority set of power stations that is the focus of the maintenance and repair team. So I think we're seeing a benefit all around of these unique conditions, but that we mustn't expect them to last forever.
What's also encouraging, Prof, is the fact that we've seen some active engagement between our government and that of Denmark, Netherlands, the most recently Germany, in terms of getting the funding to fund alternative power projects, including hydrogen and the like. And seeing that our electricity minister was at the forefront of the signing of the task team for hydrogen energy projects in South Africa with Germany in the next few years or so, is quite an important development to make sure that we are adding to the just energy transition and not solely, I suppose, focusing on fixing Eskom.
Yes, absolutely. And I should have mentioned that part of the reasons why we have less load shedding is because of the higher than expected output from wind, but also the continued expansion of both our wind and solar infrastructure is contributing significantly to the reductions in load shedding, and that will continue. There's about 30 gigawatts of renewables capacity in the pipeline, which is going to start kicking in over the next 2 to 3 years. We only need 10 of those to bring the load shedding to an end within the next 24 months. So that's all very good news. And these international agreements that you are referring to are really just building on the success of our world-famous renewables program in South Africa. It's regarded very highly. And so what we're seeing here is attracting more investment that could result in boosting and accelerating the energy transition. I'm a little skeptical of the hydrogen hype. Hydrogen's now around $5 per kilogram. It only really becomes commercially viable at about $1, $1.50. And it is coming down in price, but it's going to take a while before it's a real commercial reality.
Prof, what are the risks, the imminent risks that we still face as a country, despite the maintenance projects that we're seeing, investments in alternative sources of power, and really just the active nature at which the electricity minister is performing at the moment? What remains the biggest risks to the power supply in the country, and what those living in South Africa should be looking out for at the moment?
Well, I think we should be complimenting the Minister of Electricity. I think he really has grabbed the bull by the horns. He's pushing all the right buttons. He's not overemphasizing what can be achieved in terms of fixing the machines. He's significantly emphasizing renewables. He's referred to 15 gigawatts. He's referring to energy efficiency. He's referring to a multiplicity of sources of energy within the South African power pool. I think he's making all the right noises. He's on the job. He's giving regular press interviews. That's a completely new, fresh style of politics in South Africa. It's putting the national interest first, rather than obfuscating to hide the interests of rent seekers. So I think that's really excellent news. The challenge that we face is we will go back into stage 4, stage 6, load shedding in the relatively near future before the winter is out. So we should just brace ourselves for that and get prepared. The rooftop solar revolution is very much underway since the budget speech in February, when incentives were announced. So that's all good news. But I think the biggest threat that we face is that unless we really rapidly solve our energy crisis, we're not going to get the economic growth rates that we require. And that in turn is going to result in the continued levels of unemployment, poverty, and the worsening plight of the poorest of members of our society. That's the biggest threat that we face. And if that is exploited and some kind of insurrectionary movement triggered as a result of maybe in the future some very high levels of load shedding that people get upset with, then we could be in some serious crisis. But it looks like we're heading away from that abyss at the moment.
Prof, then what would that say to some of the naysayers who have been vocal over the last few weeks to say, well, this is just an election ploy by the ANC, and that there's been an instruction that says fire up every single cylinder that we have in the country at the moment until we get to elections, and then we'll see the crisis after the elections. Would that pour some cold water on that particular argument by those who say that this is just a political ploy?
Well, I mean, this is the real world, so let's accept that there is political pressure on Eskom, who has an acting CEO and a new board, to do whatever they can. But some of the people who watch, the experts, the technical experts who watch Eskom very closely, are not confirming these kinds of suggestions. There is a decline in unplanned breakdowns. There is increasing benefits of the investment in renewables that started, not in renewables, investment in fixing the machines that began under Curator. There is increasing benefits from renewables. So there's a combination of factors here, as well as the rooftop revolution. There's a combination of factors here, which, on balance, I tend to think that the naysayers in this particular case are wrong. I certainly subscribe to that analysis during the days of Matelo Koko and Brian Molefe, who really did try and fool the nation by just giving instructions willy-nilly to the staff, keep the machines going no matter what. I don't think we're in that situation now.
Thank you very much for that update. Energy expert Professor Mark Swilling really just pouring cold water over that argument that has been put forward by naysayers who say, well, this is just an election ploy and things will just go back literally into darkness after the elections. But of course, this is South Africa and anything is possible. And as he says, credit be given to the current electricity minister, who, as we have seen over the last few weeks alongside his team, are doing the very best that they can to provide energy in South Africa.